Hello and welcome to the Virtual Cheese Awards, showcasing the very best of British cheeses. My name is Bruce MacDonald. I'm the founder of the Guild of Cheese Graders, but this afternoon I'm not judging. I'm in charge of these two fine chaps who are doing the judging. Now we're about to do the vintage Creamery Cheddar class. And to do this, we have Terry Hudson and Chris Dawson who will introduce themselves to you. Terry first, please.
I'm Terry Hudson. I've been in the dairy industry for 50 years. I've been very fortunate to have travelled around the world and been involved in cheese making in many countries. I've actually made most varieties in the UK. I know most of the UK cheese makers, and I've been judging cheese for about 30 years.
And Chris.
Hello, my name is Chris Dawson. I'm the cheese buyer at Marks and Spencer's. I've only been in the cheese industry 18 years, so a fraction of the time that Terry's been working in the industry. But I've been very privileged to have travelled extensively across the United Kingdom and Europe, visiting a large number of cheese makers, watching them make cheese, tasting and doing lots of benchmarking over the years with the cheese makers. And I've also judged at many different cheese competitions, both in the UK and abroad. And I'm really looking forward to trying this vintage cheddar creamery class. Thank you.
Excellent. I also bow to Terry's experience and knowledge. I'm only 45 and a half years. Anyway, so first cheese is 1025. Now, just for people who are tuning in, we are out of 10, but with a weighted score for flavour, because that is the most important component. But we're scoring the appearance, aroma, texture, true to character, and flavour. And we're giving first, second, and third prizes for this. So this is a class of 10 cheeses, vintage, which hopefully will blow the socks off these guys' palates in the nicest possible way. So, looking at the appearance of cheese 1025, what comments have you got to make?
This is one of the most bizarre vintage cheddars I've seen in many a while. It's I don't know if you can see on the camera, it's got almost like a bullet hole on both sides of the cheese. And you've got all the marks coming out as if it's been really punched or something. It's very, very close textured for a vintage cheddar. With I can't see any openness at all. When I first opened it, I thought it was, it was just an Emmental being disguised as a cheddar. So yeah, in terms of appearance, I'd have to really score it, loading it as a 3.
Yeah, I've got the twin brother of cheese as Chris, so I've also got a punch mark, which is obviously the graders picked this very wedge. So the cheese iron has gone into this cheese, but it's looking very close. It's a shame that it's got a bore hole right in the middle, because we have to judge it on presentation, and that's really not acceptable. So I'll go along with Chris with a 3.
Okay. Moving on to aroma.
On a vintage cheddar cheese, we're looking for a nice, powerful aroma with complexity.
And is that what you found?
No. No, at the moment, I mean, the true test will be on the flavour when we get to taste it, but at the moment, there's not an awful lot happening.
What do you think, Chris?
I entirely agree. It's incredibly low-level aroma for a vintage cheddar. I'm going to give it another 3 because I'm getting virtually nothing from the nose other than a hint of sweetness. And it smells clean. there's some sweetness there, but there really isn't much going on. So I wait with interest what it's going to taste like.
Yeah, I'd agree. There's nothing nasty about it, like Chris said. No off flavors, but there's not a lot there of anything.
Okay. So you're a 3 as well, Terry.
3, yeah.
Okay, texture.
Again, if you can see this on the camera, incredibly close textures. There's no openness at all in the cheese, and you know when you cut it, the knife goes through the cheese almost like a hot knife in butter. It breaks down incredibly quickly, and the texture is just like a mild cheese. It's so incredibly smooth and high moisture. So again, for texture, for me, it's a 3.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, with a vintage cheese, you're looking for quite an exceptional body, but this is quite weak and smooth and buttery, which is not really what you'd expect for a vintage cheese. So 3 for me as well.
Okay, and flavor.
I'm just picking up a very one-dimensional, slightly sharp, if anything. But again, there's no initial impact. You're waiting for something to happen, but it doesn't. There's no complexity at all, which you'd expect for a vintage cheese.
My view on flavor is no more than a 3. It's very sharp. It's very acidic. And there's a hint of sweetness, but overall you're just left with sharpness on the palate, and no level of flavor or complexity, nowhere near a vintage, nowhere near a mature or next mature.
So you're 3 as well, Terry, sorry.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. So true to character. I can probably work out what that's going to be, but I'll leave it to you guys.
It's not a vintage cheddar, so it's not true to character. So I would say finish it off with a 3.
It's in the wrong class, Bruce.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, 3 for that, and we shall move on then to cheese 1053.
Obviously, you can see this is a waxed truckle. Doesn't look like it's been hand dipped because it's a bit rough around the bottom. So for an entry into a show, you'd expect something a little bit better than this. And the cheese inside is very close. Lacks character. It's very, very weak body. So to me, that's a 3 as well.
Again, I concur with Terry here. The presentation of the black wax is very poor. Hasn't been chosen well. It's very rough and ready on the base, and there are lots of drip marks going around the side. I would hazard a guess that this cheese has been extruded. There's no body to it. It's very, very, yeah, for me, it's a 3. Both the outside and the internal appearance.
Yep. Are you 3 as well, Terry? Or?
Yep.
Okay. Moving on to texture.
Aroma, is it?
That was aroma, yeah.
All right.
No, we did appearance. It's aroma next.
You've already scored that, but not to worry. So appearance you gave 3. And
Oh, right.
aroma then, yeah, carry on.
Right. Well, again, to me, it's lacking the powerful impact you'd get from a cheese. It doesn't even smell like a cheese to me. So
Aroma for me is 3. It's virtually non-existent on the nose. It's nothing unpleasant, but there's just nothing going on.
Yep. Okay. I've put down in the comments that the aroma lacks power, and I've scored it. You both gave it 3, so that's fine. Next is
in terms of texture. For me, it's a 3. It's incredibly weak-bodied, which suggests to me that this is an extruded cheese which has been overworked. Because you do get vintage cheddars that are cut from the block and then waxed.
Yes. Yeah.
This is clearly a cheese that I believe that's been extruded and then waxed. So it may be a ex-Madrid vintage cheddar, but it's certainly not that in its texture.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very sticky. It sticks to the fingers. It shouldn't be doing that. Like Chris said, a very weak body. So it's a 3. So
3 for texture as well. Yep, that's in. Okay. Flavor.
I'm getting quite a pasty, doughy flavor coming across at the front of the palate. There is a little bit of richness there coming through, but in the middle, but then the flavor completely disappears on the back palate, and you're just left with very, very little. So in terms of flavor, 4.
Yeah, at best. It's not a nice mouthfeel. It's very weak and sticky, and it's not very good on the palate. But like Chris said, it's just lacks anything. You've got the initial flavor of something, but even that's not very powerful. So,
Okay. So score-wise,
yeah, 4.
You happy with that, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah. And true to character.
4.
Yeah, again at best, because it certainly isn't a vintage cheddar.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to 1131.
So lots of calcium lactate on this.
Yep.
Don't know if you can see it or not, but which is a and for a vintage cheese. So far so good. It's got mechanical openness, and the body's feeling good. So everything's looking reasonably good so far.
I've probably got less calcium lactate on the piece I have in front of me. It's certainly very open textured. I would almost suggest to say it's weak bodied, because my cheese is actually falling apart.
All right. So, have we got the set stage 1131?
Yes. Yeah, definitely 1131.
All right. Well, mine's not falling apart. It's got, I don't know if you can see that, Chris, the calcium lactate.
No, I can't. There's a shine on the camera. But, I've got some calcium lactate here, just not as much probably as you have.
It is important that the samples that each judge has they should be replicants of what the other judges have. Because if we were doing this at a cheese show in one of the other competitions around the country in a marquee or a hall, then you guys would be standing together side by side doing it. So, and you would be judging exactly the same cheese. So you would expect the same thing to have been, I would have, to be sent out by the manufacturer.
It's interesting. When I took it out of the packet, it had already broken in two.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like, when I picked the packet up out of the polystyrene box, I could feel that there were two pieces already.
Yeah.
It hadn't stayed together.
So I suppose I should make a comment, which will go back to the manufacturer, that the judges each received different quality of samples. Would that be fair to put that down?
I think it's worth mentioning, but we'll see how we'll carry on anyway, and with that comment, and see what the rest of it's like. They should put a borehole in it like the other side.
Yeah. Okay. So appearance, you're going to give it?
Well, my appearance is, I would say 7, but Chris is going to say a lot less, so we'll see.
All I can presume is that this sample's been damaged somehow en route. It's got an open texture. It's got some nice slits in there. It looks a nice colour. I'm happy to go with 7. On the basis that Terry has the better sample of the two of us.
Okay. Moving on to aroma then.
This is classic for me, Helveticus.
Classic modern cheddar.
It's a very modern cheddar. It's a very strong aroma of sweetness and Helveticus, almost to the point of sickliness and a bit of vanilla coming through. It is very strong, very pungent.
It's almost like an Emmental in there.
Yeah, but much sweeter, because I always find, a classic Swiss Emmental has been quite sour often, whereas this is the opposite. This is sweetness in exaggeration. I think the cheesemaker went mad with the Helveticus bags.
No, I agree. I mean, maybe I should. Are we tasting it yet? Because I have tasted it, and it has.
Yeah, but if you can score the aroma first, that would be great, and then we'll move on to.
I would say a 6.
For me, it's a 4.
We'll go for a 5.
We'll go for a 5. Yeah.
It's just one-dimensional aroma, and I know what I'm going to taste.
Okay, texture.
Very soft body for vintage, high moisture. You would expect a much firmer texture. I think it breaks down very easily. It goes into a supple paste quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting much resistance between the fingers here.
No.
Okay, so score for that one. Texture.
4.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, it is far too soft. It's not what you'd expect for a vintage cheese.
Okay. I'm going to dread to ask this, but flavour?
I've already tasted it.
For me, it's a 3. It's so super sweet. That's all you're getting. And if you like that, then there will be customers who will like that super sweetness. But it's not a classic vintage cheddar that we would know and we would love and expect to see in this class here today. Mm-hmm. It's a very modern vintage cheddar, but I think a poorly made modern vintage cheddar because it's just so sweet. There's just no balance there. There's no complexity. It's just one-dimensional.
Okay, so score for flavour?
3.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's purely relying on that Helvetica sweetness.
Yeah.
To reach that depth of flavour, which doesn't work really.
Yeah. So true to character.
Well, I would say a 3 because purely based on flavour.
I would say that the cheesemaker would tell me if I was speaking to them today, it is true to their character, and that is what they're looking for in their style of cheese. it's not true to a classic vintage cheddar.
Yep. Are you 3 as well?
3.
Yep. Okay, that's that one done. Moving on to 1141.
So we got some slight openness. It's not mottled at all. It's even coloured. There's no lactate on it, not on my piece anyway. I would expect a bit more lactate to be on it for a vintage cheese, which is beyond an extra mature. Body's quite good.
Firm body, yeah. We'll come on to the body in a minute. In terms of appearance, it's a well-presented piece of cheese, but for me, it's very close textured. There is the beginnings of some calcium lactate coming through, but as I would agree with Terry, you would expect a lot more at this stage, considering it's a vintage. At best, I think I could give this a 6 from appearance, and you might argue, Terry, I'm being a bit generous.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say a 5. But
I'm happy to come down to a 5.
Okay. Okay, jolly good. Right, next up we have Aroma.
Again, I'm getting something, but it's not as powerful as I would expect.
Low level aroma, considering this is vintage. I'm going to go for 5.
Yeah.
5, okay. And texture.
As Chris said, it's a bit close. The body's quite good. It has got a little bit of flintiness, but not as flinty as you would expect for a vintage cheese. You'd expect that very, very flinty texture. So I would go for a 5 texture.
Agreed. I think initially the body's good, but when you cut into it, you don't see that flintiness, and it actually breaks down very quickly in the fingers. You don't get that flinty texture that we'd be looking for in this style of cheese. So 5.
Okay. Flavor.
For me, it's quite short flavored.
As in it disappears quickly, do you mean?
It disappears quickly. There's some upfront sweetness, a little bit of acidity, but nothing there to keep the interest, and nothing there really to raise the volume. So for me, as a vintage, it's quite low level in flavour. 4.
Yeah, again, I would agree, because I think if you have to search for the flavour and think about it, it's not right. I mean, with a good vintage cheese, you pop it into the mouth and you get the initial impact, and you don't have to search for flavours.
Yeah.
So disappointing. So I agree.
Yeah. So score was 4, did you say, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah. And Terry agreed, yeah. And true to character?
4 at best, I'd say.
Sorry?
4 at best.
Yeah.
4, yeah.
I mean, it's not a badly made cheese. It's just not in the right place or vintage.
Yeah, because as we said in our preamble, vintage is as high octane as it gets, and it should give your taste buds a good seeing to, actually, for want of a better phrase. It should do something to you. Yeah. However, right, moving on to 1142.
So I've got some calcium lactate.
Agreed, yes. You can see here some nice calcium lactate on the side of the cheese. Some open texture, maybe not as flinty as I would have expected for vintage at this moment.
Yeah, it is slightly close, but I would say a 7 for appearance.
I'd say a 6 for appearance.
So we'll go for 6.5.
Okay.
Okay, that's in. On to aroma.
It's got more aroma about this one. It's clean. There's no off flavors or taints. Nothing nasty there. I can certainly smell the sweetness. Hopefully that won't come through too strongly when we taste it.
I'm giving it a 5 for aroma. I'm not getting as much as I thought I was going to get, given the level of calcium lactate.
Yeah.
I was expecting more. Again, agree with Terry. It's clean on the nose. There's no off flavors there. But
Are you okay with 5 as well, Chris?
Yes, I
5. I agree with 5. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
5.
Okay, texture.
But texture to me should be a little bit more body and a bit firmer. It has got a slightly flinty texture, and there is calcium within the texture on mine anyway. But I would expect certainly more body for a vintage.
Could be firmer.
Yeah.
Okay, got
For me, I would expect it to be firmer. In terms of texture, 5.5.
Yeah.
Nearly gave it 55 there. That would never do. Okay, moving on to flavour.
I find it quite a challenge to eat. You're getting the upfront sweetness, but then there's just sorts of all jingle jangle sort of things going on in the mouth. It's the overall impression is that there's some either a bit of burnt caramel there or something. It's just not. I don't find it a pleasant eat. So for me, it's a 4.5 in terms of flavour. It's not rounded. It's not complex for vintage, which is a shame.
Do you think, Terry?
Yeah, the initial build-up is a sweetness, but like Chris said, it sort of disappears, and there's no lingering complexity to keep it going. It just disappears, and wouldn't go back for it again.
Slightly sour at the end of the palate, which is what's the off-putting part.
Yep.
It's a bit harsh.
Okay, score for that.
I said 4.5 for flavour.
Do you think, Terry?
Yes, I agree.
And for true to character?
Well, not really. Not again. It's not true for a vintage cheese.
Yeah.
Disappointing, really. 4, I would say.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, it scored better than the previous one, but there is very much a trend here, which is the most unfortunate trend, to be honest. So next up we have 1143.
So this on the face of it is a nice looking cheese. It's a good colour. There's a little bit of calcium lactate coming through. Where I would probably downscore it is that it doesn't look as though there's much openness. It's quite close textured. On visual, I'll give it a 5.
Okay, what do you think, Terry?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there is a little bit of calcium lactate, but I would expect quite a bit more for a vintage.
Okay. So Aroma.
Again, you get the feeling this is going to be another flavour strength based on sweetness. I don't know, but again, it's not as powerful in terms of flavour. You'd expect quite a bit more.
There's it's quite meaty on the nose. There's almost a slight hint of green gooseberry or something, which may be acid that we might see in the cheese. But certainly, I agree with Terry. I think there's going to be sweetness coming through here. For me, 4.5.
Yeah, I was going to say 4, but I'll go along with Chris. 4.5.
4.5, yep, that's fine. And texture.
It's quite firm-bodied when you try and break it down. It's quite a lot of resistance. Probably slightly less flinty than I would expect, because it does actually break down into quite a smooth, subtle texture. But certainly a firm cheese. You get the impression it's a low moisture cheese. 5.5.
Yeah. I mean, I get the impression. I mean, it's a well-balanced cheese in terms of acidity and everything, salt, moisture, and everything else. If given a bit longer, a few more months, it will probably make a decent cheese, as long as that sweet flavour didn't overtake everything.
Are you on 5.5 as well?
Yeah, agree,
Terry, yeah. Okay, flavour.
Again, I can just really pick up sweetness and not a lot else. I can't pick any savoury notes up. A slight acidity, but
yes. I think there's a nice crunch when you eat it. I think that's coming through. It's sweet, but it's not super sweet, unlike a couple that we've seen previously. It's lacking that savoury richness or complexity. It's lacking that fruitiness that we were looking for in a really good vintage. And again, the finish is quite short. 5.5.
Yeah. It's just, again, it's just lacking the impact you expect from a vintage cheese.
Yep. So are you 5.5 as well, Terry?
Yep.
Okay, and finally, true to character.
Well, 5. It's not really a vintage cheese that I would buy again. Put it that way.
You feel the same, Chris? 5?
Yes.
Yep. I can tell you that one actually slipped into the lead by half a point.
What the last one?
Yes, yeah. So next up is 1145. Sadly, none of them so far has had a glowing school report.
So there's quite a lot of lactate about mine, calcium lactate.
How's yours, Chris? Have you got a lot of lactate?
I've got a moderate amount, I'd say, and some open texture.
Yeah.
The cheese looks quite yellow and rich compared to some of the ones we've seen.
Yeah, I think it's looking pretty good, this one. So
and there's an interesting flinty texture, which we haven't seen on some of them.
So for appearance,
well, will we go for an 8, Chris?
I was going to go for a 7.
Yeah. Okay.
7?
7. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good start. Aroma.
Ooh. This has got quite a meaty, brothy aroma, which I think will come from the sweetness and probably from the calcium lactate crystal, the liquid the way that comes out of the cheddar. Reminds me of that on the nose.
I think it's the most powerful one we've had so far in terms of aroma.
Yes, it's a strong aroma. I'm not sure necessarily, Terry, it's the
right flavour.
Right aroma, but it's not unpleasant. But I'd score it down because I think it's going to be super sweet.
Yeah. Okay. I'll reserve until I taste it. So
Sure.
usually smell it.
In terms of aroma, I'll go for 6.
Okay.
Okay. And texture.
I think the texture's pretty good myself. It's got the flinty texture. It's mechanical openness.
What's your view, Chris?
I go for 7. I think it's slightly softer than I'd expect a vintage.
Yeah.
Firmer than some of the other ones we've seen.
Yeah.
But it is breaking down very quickly in my fingers.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, 7 is a good score anyway. So.
It is, yeah. Yeah. So, flavour.
I'm picking up the crunch as I'm eating it. And yes, you know, I pick up the sweetness, but there's other things going on.
For me, this is certainly the best vintage cheddar we've seen today. There's a lovely, lovely crunch coming through. There is sweetness, but it's not sickly. There is certainly other flavors coming through, which Terry's referred to. There's quite a degree of richness there. You know, let's be straight about this. This is a modern vintage cheddar. It's not our more classic cheddar, but it's a good example, and it's certainly more balanced than we've seen on any of the other cheddars in this class.
Yeah.
I would almost say 7.5, 8. I think it's a really strong contender.
I would go for 8 because I didn't have to think about this. The first one I've had where I tasted it, and you get the flavors start to come through, which is good. That's what I find attraction.
Are you happy with an 8, Chris?
Yeah.
Good. And right, true to character.
Well, like Chris said, I think it's the best we've seen so far.
Yep.
So, how many have we got left?
3 more.
Got another 3 to go after this.
Well, I think if we give this one an 8, Chris, then we've got headroom if we do find a super duper one after.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's shot it well out into the lead.
Yeah, well, deservedly so. It was very good.
You know, we can only judge the cheeses that are presented before us.
That's it. Yeah, you can only play with the hand that you've got. There is another phrase for that, but it's rather rude, so I shan't use it.
Which number now, Bruce?
We are moving on to 1190.
Gosh, it's got a 1/4 of an inch thick calcium lactate on that.
I think I know where this is coming from, but obviously I won't say. It's the color is caramel.
Sorry?
And the color.
The color
is caramel.
Oh, right.
It's the most orange of our vintage cheddars that we have. A lot of calcium lactate on the end. Again, if I just show to the camera.
Yeah, some people think that's mold, but it isn't.
No,
some people used to think it was plastic. I think I had to go to
the Americans.
Yeah,
the Americans used to think that when they ate a strong cheddar with calcium lactate crystals in it, they thought it was a small piece of glass.
Yeah.
So people exporting to America have to put disclaimers on the package.
Disclaimer, yeah.
To say that it's naturally occurring crystals.
And really, when I don't know what normal consumers are like, because we're not normal cheese consumers, but when we go out looking for vintage cheddar, first thing I look for is calcium. If it doesn't have it, I don't bother. As well, as long as you can see, well, you know, if there's a deli, then that's fine. But certainly for the creamery stuff.
Well, you know, I think we all know here, so much of the vintage cheddar that's on sale isn't really vintage cheddar. It's vintage cheddar in name, but not in maturity or complexity. And I think we've seen a fair example of that today where, you know, it's just not what it says it is on the tin.
Yeah, I think, as I said before, vintage is as high as it gets on flavour strength. So it should blow spots off your taste palette, off your taste buds. It should knock it for 6. But that's just my view.
Yeah. So on aroma.
So
appearance, I think we didn't do appearance.
Yeah, appearance score.
For me, I'm going to downscore it because I don't think it's a natural cheddar color.
Right.
I'm going to give it a 4.
Terry, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I've seen this orangey colour develop with age on other cheeses, and to me, it's not appealing.
Yep. Okay. So fine, we'll move on to Aroma.
Yeah.
This Aroma is probably the most sweet vintage cheddar we will taste today. It is so sickly sweet on the nose and so OTT, and yeah, it appeals to a small niche of customers in the UK, and I'll talk to you about them afterwards, Bruce.
Yeah. Okay, the Aroma is sickly sweet on the nose, and it's going to score
4.
Yeah.
3 maybe 3.
I was going to go for 3 myself, because I've just got a feeling that when I go to taste it, it's going to be like saccharines or something.
Yeah. Okay. Texture.
Well, to me, it's a bit too crumbly as opposed to flinty, which is created by the acidity in the curd. So I would say a 3, because
yeah, I agreed. It's quite a high moisture for vintage, and I don't understand why they make a vintage with such high moisture, because I just don't think it works. So I'd score a 3 for this.
Okay. Flavor.
here we go. Very, very crunchy, but it's just like Chris described earlier. It's just a massive sweet flavour and nothing else.
Sweet, sweet, and more sweet.
You know, there is certainly more acidity in there than I've seen on recent tastings of this cheese. You know, so it's probably not as extreme as I expected, because there's that acidity's pulling that flavour sweetness down a bit, but it's still super sweet and too sweet in my view. For me, it's 3 at best in terms of flavour.
Eric, what do you score it?
I would agree. Yeah, to me it was just far too sweet, as everybody said. So could say no more.
Okay, and true to character.
The positives, Bruce, because you know it's only fair to give the positives. It has a wonderful crunch, and that crunch is really evident. And you know, if for me, if they could sort out a better balance of sweetness and savouriness, keep the crunch.
I've put in that it has a wonderful crunch.
You know, so you know, it's worth calling out the good characteristics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you rate it for true to character?
Well, true to character, because it's in a vintage mature cheese, I would give it a 4 at best. So
You okay with that, Chris?
Yes, agreed.
Right, that's that one done. Right, next up is 1191. This is the penultimate cheese. I mean, it really, before we sign off, you know, we've been very objective. You're being very objective in your views on these, and we really should thank all the entrants for taking the time to support this competition and send their entries in. And I hope they keep on doing it. It's, you know, it's not fun. It's a serious business, and all the judges that I've seen today have treated it in that manner. But all the entrants do need a real huge vote of thanks for taking the time and effort and expense to do this.
definitely. And I always think the people that made the cheese are the real experts, because there's generations sometimes in families recipes handed down, and they're very passionate about their cheese. And as judges, our experience is probably broader, but theirs is purely focused on their cheese.
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate in that we get to actually go out into the industry, well, certainly in better times, and just literally see the passion that hundreds of people in our, thousands of people in our industry have got for the products that they make. It's absolutely incredible, it really is. It's amazed me for years. Anyway, enough of that. We'll move on to.
And long may it continue.
Well, I certainly hope so. I hope it continues and strengthens, actually. So 1191.
Yeah. I can't see any lactate on mine. I don't know if you can, Chris.
I've got low level lactate on mine, just coming through. A bit more on one end and a little bit coming through on the other surfaces of the cheese. You would probably expect more, but you know, the fact it's there is encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Okay.
So I think in terms of appearance, it's there's certainly some open texture there. There's some flintiness. I'm going for 7.
Right. Okay.
Seven. That's a good start. Okay, moving on to aroma.
I'm getting a slightly meaty aroma, which is suggesting sweetnesses to follow.
Yeah. Again, there's nothing off, no off flavors, taints, or anything bad. It's
So 6 for me in terms of aroma, because there's certainly, you know, it's more on going on there than some of the other vintage cheddars that we've seen.
yeah.
You okay with 6, Terry?
I am. Yeah. It's definitely
Excellent.
more aroma.
Okay, texture. Oh, blast.
Probably slightly short, but again, with a vintage cheese, you'll expect it to start to get a bit brittle. So, but it's maybe a bit on the weaker side. But I would give this a 6 as well.
Yeah, I'm finding the curd is a bit brittle. It's a bit lumpy. But I think part of that might be the calcium lactate that I'm feeling. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go for 6.5.
And Terry, you gave it 6, did you?
Yeah, I'll go for 6.5. Keep it simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, you know, considering it is a vintage, you'd expect the texture to get a bit crumbly and brittle, as we all do.
Okay. Speaking personally. Flavor then, chaps.
It's got a lovely crunch. It's certainly quite rich. You know, it is on the sweeter side, but I don't think it's over sweet.
No.
You know, if you were to create the perfect cheddar, yes, you want a bit more savouriness, but it's certainly got quite a bit of richness coming through here and interest.
Yeah, the majority of the flavour is sweet, but there are other things going on, and it does linger. It's not good when you get that initial bang with the sweetness and it disappears, but this carries on, which is good.
It's really important in a vintage of all that, yeah, it's got bang, it's got impact, then the flavour develops, then you've got this nice long finish, and sometimes even in the finish, the flavours can still be changing. Yeah, complex. It should be a complex beast. Anyway, so your score for flavour is going to be.
I'm going for 7.5.
Right, I was thinking 7, so 7.5. Yeah, I quite like it actually. So
Right, and true to type, character, I should say.
well, I think it's more in keeping for a vintage cheddar than
Yeah.
a lot of them. So I would go for an 8. Because I think it's got a lot more character about it for a vintage cheese. Chris,
You okay with that, Chris?
Yeah, no, I'll go with an 8. I'll go with an 8.
You go with an 8. Good man. Right. Right. That actually just shot that one into the lead.
Well,
So we've got one cheese to go. It put it in the lead. It put that one in the lead by quite a good way, actually.
I think then, Terry, we should go back
Yes,
at the end of this and go back to that other one that we thought was so good.
Hey, well, we'll do 1192 first, shall we?
Yes.
Yeah, if I can find it. Quite a bit of calcium lactate on mine.
I've got a little bit, probably not as much as you.
Yeah, I think I've got the corner of the 20-kilo block, so it's on 3 sides.
So you've probably got the corner that's sitting at the bottom of the stack, and I might have the corner at the top of the stack, so the whey has drained to the base.
Could be.
Mine's slightly more bleached than some of the other samples we have here, Terry.
Yeah, I haven't got any. Mine's quite uniform, actually.
So from a visual, 6.5. It doesn't look particularly open, but
Yeah, again, mine is open. So if I said 7.5 and we agree on 7,
yeah, no, that's fine.
because obviously my sample's a bit better than yours.
Okay, moving on to aroma. Aroma.
I'm not picking up a great deal of sweetness on this one. Yeah.
It's quite a low level aroma, I'd suggest. I'm thinking about a 4.
Yeah.
This is the vintage, you'd expect a lot more.
Yeah.
4s all round then. Okay, moving on to texture.
My texture is fine, really. It's not weak. It's quite firm bodied. It breaks down smooth. I would say a 6 for my piece anyway, but I don't know what Chris has got. He seems to have a slightly different.
Yeah. I'm going to go for a 5. If we mark it as a 5.5.
Yeah. I pop that in. So, flavour.
I'm finding it quite claggy in the mouth and quite sour. I was expecting to get a lot more sweetness and maybe some savoury characteristic. but overall, I'm getting a harsh finish and just a sourness across the palate.
Yeah, that's very strange because yours sounds more acidic. Mine's not bleached at all, but I would say mine is probably lacking in strength of flavour. I am picking up some sweet notes. I'm not picking up any sour notes, but I would say this is not great in terms of flavour. A bit disappointing. So I would say a 4 for mine in terms, because it's lacking in any complexity or strength.
I'd say a 3 for me.
So a 3.5 then. Yep. Like I say, it doesn't sound like Chris's cheese is the same as mine.
3.5.
It's a bit
Terry, I've got a real sour flavour now in my mouth from that.
Yeah.
It's really not pleasant.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a great way to end it.
So we want to look at them 2 cheeses, don't we?
Was that 1145?
The two that have scored the highest are the second last one and 1143. But there is quite a distance between the two of them, to be honest. In fact, there's a long way between them. So it'd be quite remarkable if 1143 was to be the winner, because oh sorry, wait a minute, I'm telling you the wrong thing. Hang on, start again. Cheese number 7, which was right. In first place at the moment, we have cheese number 7, which is 1145. Second place was cheese number 9, which is 1191. And there's not much between them. And in third place, we have cheese number 1143, which was the 6th sample. But the cheeses in first and second place are close. Sorry, I got that wrong before. There's a 1.5 between them. So that would be cheese number 1145 and 1191. 1145 is in the lead.
I think we should just look at the first 2.
Yes, I think the first 2 would be fine. Yeah, I think the first 2 is enough. Think so, Chris?
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. Okay, so it's 1145 is currently in first place and 1191 is in second place.
Personally, I think the one that's currently second is better than the first one. We'll see if Chris agrees.
$1191 is a sweeter version of the two of them. I'm picking up a bit of burnt caramel coming back on the end of that. Whereas with 1145, I'm finding there's a lovely fruity umami characteristic coming through.
Which one is where did that come before, Bruce?
1145 is currently in the lead.
Right.
I personally think it's better balanced than 1145.
That was one of the comments that was made, actually. More balanced. One of the comments was, has a crunch, sweetness, other flavors also, richness, more balanced. Yeah.
And it's still quite creamy, even though it's a vintage cheese with a lot of flavor. It's still creamy in the mouth, and then you get that lovely crunch coming through. I think 1191 is a very worthy second place. I just think there's just two, picking between the two, I'd say 1145 is better balanced. 1191 is a really good cheese, but slightly more out there on the sweet extremes.
Yeah.
Both are good cheeses. They are.
Yeah.
So
would you give it to the one that's more balanced then?
I would personally.
Yeah. I think it's the same cheese. Is it the one where it's quite open texture though?
Yes.
Yeah, it is the same cheese that I like. Yeah.
So we're
But
just going to keep.
There's a nice level of moisture in there,
Mm.
but it's still got a lot of flavour and great crunch. And you've got that fruitiness, which, I always think of as a really classic, traditional almost,
Yeah, I think there's much more complexity in terms of flavour on that cheese.
In 1145. The one that's in first place at the moment, you mean?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, with a slightly open texture.
Right, so we'll stick with 1145 in first and 1191 in second, and then the third was whatever it was. Right, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I'll finish off the score sheet and get it off to Richard. On behalf of, I hope I can speak on behalf of the Virtual Cheese Awards, thank you so much for giving up your time today. And giving of your expertise. A joy.
Thank you, Bruce. It's been really enjoyable, and you've been a fantastic moderator. And Terry, I've really enjoyed listening to your expertise.
And as I'm a good Scotsman, Slangiva.
What was the number 3, just out of interest?
Just go back. 28.25 was 1143.
1143 was the third. Okay.